He went to collect debt, instead rode off with an Apache bride who chose him as her partner. The rifle barrel pressed cold against Jake's spine the moment he dismounted. He froze, hands still gripping the saddle horn, dust settling around his boots. The ranch looked abandoned from the trail, but clearly someone had been watching his approach for the last mile. A woman's voice cut through the desert silence, sharp as broken glass. "You came for money." "Wrong day for that, cowboy." Jake raised his hands slowly, turning his head just enough to see her. She stood 5 feet back, Winchester steady in her grip, black hair braided tight against her skull. Apache, he realized. Her calico dress was torn at the hem, dried blood spattering the fabric. Behind her, the ranch house door hung crooked on broken hinges. "Name's Jake Cordell," he said, keeping his voice level. "Looking for a man named Dutch Kramer. Owes my boss $300 for horses he never paid for." "Dutch is dead," she said flatly. "Been dead since sunrise. If you want your money, you can dig through what's left of him in the barn." Jake's stomach tightened. The smell hit him then, carried on the hot wind. Copper and gunpowder, decay already setting in under the brutal sun. What happened here? She lowered the rifle an inch, dark eyes scanning the empty horizon behind him. Bounty hunters. 6 of them. They wanted me, not Dutch. He got stupid trying to be a hero. Now you need to leave before they circle back. Did you kill them? 4 of them? No hesitation, no pride, just fact. The other 2 rode for help. They'll bring a dozen more by nightfall. Should have turned his horse west and forgotten the debt, forgotten this blood-soaked ranch, forgotten the Apache woman with steady hands and death in her eyes. His boss could write off $300, but something in her stance, the way she kept glancing at the empty desert, told him she knew she wouldn't survive the night alone. "You got supplies?" he asked. "Water? Ammunition?" She frowned, suspicion crossing her face. "Why do you care?" "Because if there's a dozen men coming and you killed 4 of their friends, they're not going to make it quick when they find you." Jake lowered his hands carefully. "I'm asking if you're planning to run or planning to die." "Running just means dying tired," she said. "This is my land now." Dutch left no family. "I got nowhere else to go. This is suicide, then leave." Jake looked at the ranch house, the broken windows, the corral fence smashed where horses had been driven out in panic. A bad death waited here. He thought about riding away, thought about the easy choice. Then he thought about what a dozen angry bounty hunters would do to a woman alone. "How much ammunition you got?" he asked again. She studied him for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but calculation. 2 boxes of cartridges, maybe 50 rounds. That's not enough. Jake moved slowly toward his saddlebags. "I got supplies, food, water, bullets. We fortify the house, we might hold them off until they lose interest." "We?" The rifle came back up. "You don't know me. You got no reason to stay and die here." "You're right," Jake said, "but I got even less reason to live with knowing I could have helped and didn't." She stared at him, the Winchester barrel wavering slightly. In the distance, the dust devil spun across the empty plain, red dirt climbing toward the cloudless sky. The sun beat down merciless and certain. Finally, she lowered the weapon. "My name is Marie. Marie Ashwood. My mother was Apache. My father was a trapper. Both are dead now. Pleased to meet you, Marie." Jake pulled his rifle from its scabbard. "Let's see if we can keep you from joining them." They worked fast, boarding windows with whatever wood they could scavenge from the barn. Marie moved with practiced efficiency, no wasted motion, no unnecessary words. She'd already dragged Dutch's body out back and covered it with stones before Jake arrived. The 4 dead bounty hunters lay where they fell, weapons stripped, horses long gone. The sun climbed higher, heat shimmering off the desert floor like water. Jake positioned ammunition boxes at 3 different windows, filled every container they had with well water, moved furniture to create defensive positions. Marie worked beside him, matching his pace, anticipating needs before he spoke them. "You know how to shoot?" she asked, testing the boards on the east window. Well, enough gets you killed." She handed him a canteen. "When they come, aim for center mass. Don't try for headshots, don't waste bullets on warning shots." "They won't warn you." Jake drank, the water already warm from the heat. "You done this before?" "Stayed alive this long, didn't I?" They finished the fortifications as noon approached, the temperature climbing past bearable into brutal. Jake checked his pocket watch. 6 hours, maybe 7 before the bounty hunters returned. Not enough time to run, too much time to wait. Marie sat against the wall, cleaning her Winchester with a strip of cloth. "You can still leave," she said without looking up. "Take your horse, ride hard, be 20 miles gone before sunset. Nobody would blame you." Jake checked the load in his Colt revolver, snapped the cylinder shut. "I would." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something passed between them in the hot shadows of that broken ranch house. Not love, not yet, but recognition. Two people who'd run out of easy choices and found each other at the end of hope. "When this is over," Marie said quietly, "if we're both still breathing, I'm leaving this place. Going north, maybe Montana. Somewhere they don't know my face." "That's a long ride," Jake said. "You offering to guide me?" He met her eyes. "Depends. You planning to shoot me once you don't need me anymore?" The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Haven't decided yet." Outside, a hawk screamed, circling high on the thermals. The desert stretched empty and vast, but Jake knew that emptiness was temporary. Violence was coming, riding hard on tired horses, driven by greed and revenge. He settled in by the window, rifle across his knees, and waited for the dust cloud that would signal the end of peace. The sun crawled toward the horizon, and Marie Ashwood sat beside him, checking her ammunition one bullet at a time, counting the cost of survival in brass and lead. Jake had come for money. Now he was staying for something else entirely, something he couldn't name but recognized like an old wound. The debt was forgotten. The $300 didn't matter. What mattered was the woman beside him, calm as stone, fierce as fire, who'd already decided she'd rather die standing than run forever. The shadows lengthened, the heat pressed down, and somewhere, out in that vast nothing, hoofbeats drummed closer, bringing death or deliverance, and Jake Cordell realized he'd stopped caring which. He'd made his choice. Now he'd see it through. The dust appeared just after 4, a dark smudge on the southern horizon growing steadily larger. Marie spotted it first, her eyes sharper than his, trained by years of watching for danger. She didn't speak, just pointed, and Jake felt his heart rate kick up a notch. 12 riders, she said after a moment. Maybe 13. Coming fast. Jake moved to the south window, squinting through the gap in the boards. The dust cloud resolved into individual shapes. Horses and men pushing hard across the desert. They weren't trying to hide their approach. Why would they? They had numbers, they had confidence, and they thought they were hunting one woman alone. "They don't know I'm here," Jake said. "That's an advantage." Marie loaded her Winchester, the metallic sound loud in the quiet house. Small advantage. Still 12 against 2. Better odds than you had this morning." She almost smiled again. "You got a strange way of measuring luck, cowboy." The riders slowed as they approached, spreading out in a loose semicircle around the ranch. Jake could see them clearly now. Rough men, hard men, the kind who made their living hunting people for money. They wore gun belts heavy with ammunition, carried rifles and shotguns, their faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats. One man rode forward alone, stopping 50 yards from the house. He was older than the others, gray beard, scarred hands. A leader, Jake figured, the kind who'd done this before. "Marie Ashwood," the man called out, his voice carrying across the empty space. "My name is Cole Bennett. You killed 4 of my men this morning. That's a hanging offense, even for a woman." Marie stayed low, out of sight. "They came to kill me. I defended myself." "The law don't see it that way," Bennett said. "You got a price on your head. $500 for the murder of a cattle rancher named Patterson up in New Mexico. Dead or alive, the poster says, but I prefer alive. Makes the bounty more certain." Jake glanced at Marie. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight. "I didn't kill Patterson," she said. "His partner did. I just saw it happen. Then you can explain that to a judge." Bennett shifted in his saddle. "Come out peaceful and we'll make sure you get a trial. Stay in there and we'll burn you out. Either way, we're not leaving without you." The other riders had dismounted, using their horses for cover. Rifles ready. Professional, Jake noted. "This wouldn't be easy." "You got 1 minute to decide," Bennett said. "After that, we start shooting." Marie looked at Jake. "Last chance to leave. Sneak out the back, take your horse, they'll never know you were here." "And miss all this excitement?" Jake checked his rifle. "Not likely." She held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Something changed in her expression, a wall coming down or maybe a door opening. "You're either the bravest man I've met or the dumbest. Probably both." The minute ticked away in silence. Jake could hear his own breathing, the creak of leather as Marie shifted position, the distant cry of a bird. Then Bennett's voice cut through the stillness. "Time's up, Marie. Last chance." "Go to hell," she called back. The first shot splintered wood near Jake's window. He returned fire immediately, aiming for the nearest horse. The animal screamed and bolted, taking its rider's cover with it. The man scrambled for new position as bullets from Marie's Winchester forced him to keep his head down. Then, all hell broke loose. The bounty hunters opened up from 3 sides, bullets hammering the ranch house like hail. Jake moved from window to window, firing carefully, making each shot count. Marie worked the east wall, her Winchester barking steadily, methodically. The noise was deafening, smoke filling the air, splinters flying from the boards they'd hastily nailed in place. A man tried to rush the front door. Jake shot him twice, center mass like Marie had said, and the man went down hard. Another tried from the side, and Marie's bullet caught him in the leg, sending him sprawling. "They're testing us!" Marie shouted over the gunfire. "Seeing how much fight we got, then let's show them." Jake reloaded fast, his hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. He'd been in fights before, but never anything like this. Never odds this bad, never stakes this high. He thought about his boss back in Santa Fe, probably sitting in his office wondering why Jake hadn't returned. $300. It seemed like a joke now. The shooting died down as the bounty hunters reassessed. 2 men were down, 1 dead, 1 wounded. The others had pulled back to better cover, realizing this wouldn't be the easy payday they'd expected. Bennett's voice rang out again. "Who's in there with you, Marie?" Jake stayed quiet, reloading. "Doesn't matter," Bennett continued. "You're just making it worse for yourself. We got time. We got supplies. We can wait you out, or we can burn you out. Your choice." Marie caught Jake's eye across the room. "We can't hold them forever." "Don't need forever," Jake said. "Just need to make them decide it's not worth the cost. They already lost 2 men. That just makes them angrier. Then we make them lose more." The sun was dropping now, painting the desert in shades of orange and red. Shadows stretched long across the dirt, and Jake realized darkness might actually help them. Harder to see targets, harder to coordinate an assault. "When night falls," he said, "they'll probably try to burn us out. We need to be ready to move fast." Marie nodded. "There's a root cellar out back. Stone walls, separate entrance. If the house catches fire, we can fall back there. How long can we hold in a cellar?" "Long enough to make them think twice about coming down after us." Another volley of shots slammed into the house, more sustained this time. The bounty hunters had found their rhythm, taking turns keeping up pressure while others reloaded. Jake fired back, conserving ammunition, picking his moments. He clipped 1 man in the shoulder, sent another diving for cover. The light faded slowly, the desert heat giving way to the cool of evening. Jake's throat was dry, his shoulders ached from holding the rifle, his ears rang from the constant gunfire. Beside him, Marie fought with the same steady determination she'd shown from the start, never panicking, never wasting shots. "You're good at this," Jake said during the lull. "Had good teachers." Her voice was flat. "And lots of practice staying alive. What happened with Patterson in New Mexico?" She was quiet for a moment, ejecting spent cartridges, reloading. "I worked in his house, cleaning, cooking." His partner, a man named Sutton, got drunk one night and shot Patterson over a land dispute. Saw the whole thing. Sutton said if I told anyone, he'd make sure I hung for it. People believe a white businessman over an Apache woman every time. "So you ran. What choice did I have?" She slammed the Winchester's action closed. "Been running ever since. Dutch found me in Arizona, offered me work and protection. Wasn't a kind man, but he kept his word. Now he's dead, and here we are." Jake understood then. She wasn't a murderer. She was a witness, a woman caught between truth and survival, hunted for seeing too much. The bounty on her head was a lie, but it didn't matter. In the eyes of men like Bennett, she was worth $500, and morality didn't factor into the equation. "We get out of this," Jake said. "We'll find a way to clear your name." "There is no clearing it." Marie's voice carried no self-pity, just cold assessment. "I got Apache blood. I got no money. I got no family with influence. The law don't work for people like me. Then we go somewhere the law doesn't reach." She looked at him, and in the dying light, Jake saw something kindle in her eyes. Not hope exactly, but possibility. "You really mean that? You'd ride off with a wanted woman?" "I rode into a gunfight for you," Jake said. "Leaving together seems like the easy part." A shout from outside interrupted them. "We're coming in," Bennett called. "You had your chance." Jake saw the torches then, flames flickering in the darkness. 3 men were lighting rags stuffed into bottles, preparing to throw them at the house. Marie saw them too and swore. "Cellar," she said. "Now." They grabbed ammunition boxes and water, moving fast through the back room. Marie kicked open a trapdoor hidden under a rug, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Jake went first, rifle ready, half expecting ambush. But the cellar was empty, just packed earth and cool stone, a space maybe 10 feet square. Above them, glass shattered and flames whooshed to life. Smoke began filtering down through cracks in the floorboards. The bounty hunters were cheering, confident now, thinking they'd won. Marie pulled the trapdoor shut and wedged it with a timber. They sat in the darkness, listening to the house burn above them, listening to boots stomping across the floor, searching for bodies. "They'll find the cellar," Marie whispered. "I know." Jake positioned himself at the base of the steps, rifle aimed upward. When they opened that door, the first one threw dies, maybe the second too. After that, they'll have to decide if you're worth it. They waited in the hot darkness, sweat running down Jake's face, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. The house groaned and cracked as fire consumed it, timbers falling, walls collapsing. Smoke thickened in the cellar, making breathing difficult. Then, suddenly, silence. The boots above them stopped moving. Voices argued, too muffled to make out words. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. This was it. The moment that would determine everything. The trapdoor rattled. Someone testing it, finding it wedged. More arguing, louder now. Then Bennett's voice, clear and close. "You're done, Marie. Come up now, we'll make it quick. Stay down there, and you'll suffocate when the fire burns through." Jake said nothing, waiting. Marie's hand found his in the darkness, squeezed once, then let go. A goodbye or a promise, he couldn't tell which. The trapdoor exploded inward, blown off its hinges by a shotgun blast. Smoke and flame poured into the cellar. A shape appeared in the opening, silhouetted against the burning house. Jake fired. The man fell backward with a scream. Another shape appeared, and Marie's Winchester roared beside him. That man fell too. Then silence again, longer this time. Jake's ears rang from the gunfire in the enclosed space. He could barely breathe now, the smoke suffocating, the heat overwhelming. They couldn't stay here much longer. "Marie Ashwood," Bennett's voice farther away now. "You're tough, I'll give you that. But you're trapped. You got maybe 10 minutes before that fire kills you. Come out now, hands up, and you live. Stay in there, and you burn." Marie coughed, pressing a wet cloth to her face. He's right. "We go up shooting," Jake said. "Take as many as we can, or we surrender. Live to run another day." Jake looked at her through the smoke and darkness. "You really think they'll let you live?" She was quiet for a moment. "No, but I'm tired of killing." "Then let me do it." Jake reloaded his rifle. "You stay here. I'll go up first, draw their fire. While they're focused on me, you slip out the back. In the confusion, in the dark, you might make it. That's suicide. That's the only play we got left." Before Marie could argue, Jake moved. He climbed the steps fast, bursting through the burning doorway with rifle blazing. Shapes scattered in the firelight, men diving for cover, shouting in surprise. Jake ran toward the nearest horse, firing as he went, trying to create chaos, trying to give Marie a chance. A bullet caught him in the side, spinning him around. He kept moving, kept shooting, kept drawing fire. Another bullet grazed his shoulder. He stumbled, went down on one knee, and saw Marie emerging from the smoke behind him, running low, heading for the darkness beyond the burning house. Then Bennett stepped into view, pistol raised. Jake tried to swing his rifle around, but his arms wouldn't obey. Blood soaked his shirt, warm and wet. He'd been hit worse than he thought. Bennett aimed at Marie's fleeing form. Jake found his voice. "Hey," he croaked. Bennett turned, and Jake threw his empty rifle at the man's head. It didn't hit, but it made Bennett flinch, made him hesitate. That second of hesitation cost him. Marie's Winchester cracked from the darkness. Bennett went down, clutching his chest. The remaining bounty hunters opened fire blindly, shooting at shadows, panic replacing confidence. Marie appeared beside Jake, hauling him to his feet. "Move, cowboy." Time to ride. They stumbled toward the corral where horses milled in confusion. Marie grabbed 2 mounts, barely pausing to check saddles. She pushed Jake onto one horse, mounted the other, and kicked both animals into motion. Bullets whined past them in the darkness. Jake clung to the saddle horn, his vision blurring, blood loss making the world tilt and spin. But Marie rode beside him, one hand on his horse's reins, keeping him upright, keeping him moving. They galloped north into the desert night, leaving the burning ranch behind, leaving the dead and dying, leaving everything except each other. Jake's last clear thought before darkness took him was that he'd come to collect a debt and ended up owing his life to an Apache woman who fought like a warrior and chose her own destiny. Then the darkness swallowed him, and he knew nothing more. Jake woke to pain and the smell of sage smoke. His side burned like someone had pressed a hot iron against his ribs, and his shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it, gasping as white-hot agony shot through his torso. "Don't move." Marie's voice came from somewhere to his left. "You'll tear the stitches." He forced his eyes open. Dawn light filtered through canvas above him. A tent, he realized. They were in a tent somewhere, and he had no memory of how they'd gotten here. How long? His voice came out as a rasp. 2 days. Marie appeared in his vision, kneeling beside him. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. "I had to dig the bullet out of your side." "One just grazed your shoulder. You're lucky." "Don't feel lucky. You're alive. That's lucky." She held a canteen to his lips, and he drank gratefully. The water was cool and clean, the best thing he'd ever tasted. "We're about 40 miles north of the ranch. I found this spot yesterday, been hiding out, waiting for you to wake up or die." Jake managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Sorry to keep you waiting. You should have left when you had the chance." But her voice held no accusation, just statement of fact. "Probably." Jake looked around the tent. Their supplies were neatly organized, weapons cleaned and ready, bedrolls laid out. "You did all this while I was unconscious?" "Someone had to." Marie sat back, studying him. "I kept watch, tended your wounds, hunted for food, found this old prospector camp abandoned, figured we could use it until you recovered enough to ride." "The bounty hunters?" "Haven't seen any sign of pursuit. I think we hurt them bad enough that they decided you weren't worth chasing." She paused. "Or they think you're already dead." Jake shifted carefully, testing his injuries. The pain was manageable if he didn't move too quickly. "What's the plan now?" "I was going to ask you that." Marie handed him a piece of dried meat. "You're in no condition to ride hard. We got enough supplies for maybe a week if we're careful. After that, we need to find a town, get proper food and medicine. Towns mean questions. Questions mean risk." "I know." She met his eyes. "But you need a real doctor. That wound could get infected. You could die." Jake chewed the jerky, slowly thinking. They were fugitives now, both of them. He'd killed at least 2 bounty hunters, maybe more. Even if he explained the circumstances, even if people believed him, he'd be tied up in legal proceedings for months. And Marie would be arrested the moment they showed their faces. "Tell me about Montana," he said. Marie raised an eyebrow. "What about it?" "You said you were thinking of going north." "Montana's big country. Lots of places a person could disappear, start fresh." "That was before you got shot helping me." "Doesn't change anything." Jake struggled to sit up, gritting his teeth against the pain. Marie moved to help him, propping him against the saddle. "I made my choice back at that ranch. I stand by it. You could still turn back. Ride to Santa Fe, tell your boss what happened. Might even get a reward for fighting off bounty hunters." "And leave you alone?" "After all this?" Jake shook his head. "No. We started this together. We finish it together." Marie was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face. "Why? You don't know me." "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe not." Jake reached for the canteen, took another drink. "But somewhere back there in that burning house, watching you fight like the world depended on it, I decided you're worth knowing, worth fighting for, worth riding to Montana with, if you'll have me." She looked away, but not before he saw something glisten in her eyes. "You're delirious from blood loss. You don't know what you're saying. I'm clear-headed enough." He caught her hand, and she didn't pull away. "Listen, Marie, I spent the last 5 years working for someone else, collecting debts, taking orders, never deciding anything for myself. Yesterday I made my own choice, maybe the first real choice I've made in a long time. I chose you. I chose this, and I don't regret it. You might when we're starving in some Montana winter, then we'll starve together." She almost smiled, that ghost of expression he'd seen before. "You really are the dumbest, brave man I've ever met. I'll take that as a compliment." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun climbed higher, warming the canvas. Jake's pain was still there, sharp and insistent, but somehow more bearable now. Marie moved around the tent, checking supplies, cleaning weapons, planning their next move with the same methodical competence she brought to everything. "There's a town called Copper Creek about 70 miles northeast," she said eventually. "Small place, mining town. Probably got a doctor or at least someone who knows medicine better than me. We could risk it. Too dangerous. They'll have heard about what happened at the ranch by now." "Then where?" Marie turned to face him. "You can't ride hard yet. Hell, you can barely sit up. We need help." Jake thought for a moment, then remembered something. "When I was working collections, I met a man named Henry Chen. Had a trading post way out in the middle of nowhere, about 100 miles north of here. Good man, discreet, didn't ask questions. If we can make it there, he might help us. 100 miles in your condition? We go slow. Take breaks. I'll manage." Marie studied him skeptically. "You'll tear open those stitches before we make 20 miles? Then you'll sew me back up again." Jake met her gaze steadily. "I'm not giving up, Marie. Not after coming this far." She sighed, but he could see her calculating, running through options in her mind. 2 weeks, she said finally. "We take 2 weeks to make that 100 miles. I'm not killing you to save you. Deal." They spent the rest of that day preparing. Marie fashioned a better bandage for Jake's side, using cloth torn from one of the blankets. She packed supplies carefully, distributing weight between both horses, making sure they had enough water for the journey. Jake watched her work, admiring her efficiency, her practical competence in the face of impossible odds. As evening approached, she heated beans over a small fire, keeping the smoke minimal to avoid detection. They ate in silence, and Jake found himself studying her face in the flickering light. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 25, maybe younger. Blinds around her eyes spoke of hard living, but underneath was a kind of fierce beauty that had nothing to do with softness. "What are you staring at?" she asked without looking up. "Just thinking about how I'm the luckiest man alive to have met you." Now she did look at him, and her expression softened. "You got shot. Twice. You're running for your life. You lost your job and probably your good name. That's your definition of lucky?" "I'm alive. I'm with someone worth being alive for. Yeah, I'd call that lucky." Marie shook her head, but she was smiling now, a real smile that transformed her face. "You're crazy." "Probably." Jake grinned back. "But you haven't shot me yet, so I must be doing something right." She laughed then, a sound like water over stones, clear and unexpected. It changed the whole mood of the camp, lifting the weight of their situation for just a moment. Jake felt something warm spread through his chest that had nothing to do with his injuries. They talked late into the night, sharing stories, learning each other. Marie told him about growing up between two worlds, Apache and white, never fully belonging to either, about losing her parents young, about surviving on her own, about the constant vigilance required just to stay alive. Jake told her about his own past, about a family farm lost to debt, about years of drifting, about the hollow feeling of working for money without purpose. "What did you want?" Marie asked, before life got in the way. "What did you dream about?" Jake thought about it. "A place of my own, I guess. Some land, maybe horses. Something that was mine that nobody could take away. Montana's got land. Got horses, too. You offering to share?" "Maybe." She poked the dying fire with a stick. "If you don't get us killed first, I'll do my best." They lapsed into silence again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Companionable, easy. The kind of silence that exists between people who understand each other without needing constant words. Jake dozed off eventually, his body demanding rest to heal. When he woke in the deep night, he found Marie sitting watch by the tent entrance, rifle across her knees, staring out at the star-filled sky. She looked small and alone in the darkness, and Jake understood then that she'd been alone for a long time, fighting her battles solo, trusting no one. "Marie," he said softly. She turned, and in the starlight he could see her face. "You should be sleeping. Come here." She hesitated, then moved closer, settling beside him. Jake reached out, ignoring the pain in his shoulder, and took her hand. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it together, I promise you that." Her fingers tightened around his. "Don't make promises you can't keep. I keep my promises." She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned down and kissed him. It was brief, gentle, a question more than a statement. Jake kissed her back, tasting dust and smoke, and something sweeter underneath. When they parted, she rested her forehead against his. "Crazy cowboy," she whispered. "Apache warrior," he replied. She smiled against his skin. "We're going to die in Montana, aren't we?" Probably. But it'll be one hell of a ride getting there. Marie laughed softly and settled beside him, her head on his good shoulder. Jake wrapped his arm around her, and they lay like that as the stars wheeled overhead and the desert night embraced them both. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Jake felt something like hope. Not the foolish hope of easy victory, but the stubborn hope of two people who refused to quit, who'd found each other in the worst of circumstances and decided that was reason enough to keep fighting. The bounty hunters might still be hunting them. The law might want Marie's head. Winter was coming, and Montana was far away, but none of that mattered right now. Right now, Jake Cordell had everything he needed. A woman worth dying for. A cause worth fighting for. And the promise of tomorrow, fragile as it was. He closed his eyes and slept, dreamless and deep, while Marie kept watch over them both. They started riding on the third day after Jake regained consciousness. Marie had been right about his condition. Every movement sent pain lancing through his side, and within an hour of setting out, fresh blood had soaked through his bandages. But Jake gritted his teeth and kept riding, because staying put meant death just as surely as pushing too hard. The landscape changed as they traveled north, desert giving way to scrubland, then to rolling hills dotted with juniper and pine. They moved slowly, stopping frequently to rest the horses and let Jake recover. Marie scouted ahead, always watchful, always alert for signs of pursuit. On the fourth day, they spotted riders in the distance. Marie pulled Jake into a ravine, and they waited there for 2 hours while a group of 5 men passed less than a mile away. Too far to identify, but Jake saw the way they moved, methodical and searching, and knew they were hunters. "They're still looking," Marie said quietly. "Let them look." Jake shifted in his saddle, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. "We're ghosts now." We disappeared. But the close call rattled them both. They traveled by night after that, sleeping during the day in whatever cover they could find. It was slower, more dangerous, but harder to track. Jake's wounds protested the irregular schedule, but he never complained. Marie watched him with concern. She tried to hide, checking his bandages at every stop, making sure he drank enough water. On the 7th day, they ran out of food. Marie shot a jackrabbit that evening, and they roasted it over a carefully concealed fire. The meat was tough and gamey, but Jake had never tasted anything better. "How much farther to this trading post?" Marie asked, chewing slowly. Jake consulted his mental map. "Maybe 40 miles. 3 more days at this pace. You going to make it? Don't have much choice." She studied him in the firelight. "Your wounds are healing. Not as fast as I'd like, but you're not getting worse. That's something. Thanks to you." Jake reached across the fire and she took his hand. "I'd be dead 3 times over without you. You'd never have gotten shot in the first place without me. Worth it." Marie squeezed his hand, then released it to tend the fire. "Tell me about Henry Chen. Why do you trust him?" Jake leaned back against his saddle. "Met him 2 years ago. I was collecting a debt from a man who'd run off to Chen's trading post. When I got there, I found out the man had died of snakebite a week earlier. Chen had already buried him, taken care of his horse, done everything proper. He could have just taken the man's belongings and said nothing. Instead, he inventoried everything, wrote it all down, said whoever the man owed money to deserved to know what happened. Honest man. He's got principles. Doesn't judge people by their past, only by how they act in the present. Has some Apache heritage himself, I think. His wife was Navajo. She died a few years back, and now he runs the post alone." Marie poked the fire thoughtfully. "You think he'll help us?" "I think he won't turn us in without hearing our story. Beyond that, I don't know. But it's the best shot we've got." They finished eating and doused the fire, settling in for a few hours of sleep before riding again. Jake's side ached constantly now, a dull throb that never quite faded. But the sharp pain had diminished, and he could move more freely. Marie's stitching had held, and no infection had set in. Small mercies, but he'd learned to be grateful for them. The next 3 days passed in a blur of riding and resting, hiding and moving. They saw more riders twice, always distant, always searching. Once they heard gunshots echoing across the hills, though whether it was hunters or just someone shooting game, they couldn't tell. Jake used the long hours in the saddle to think about the future. Montana seemed like a dream, impossibly far away, but he let himself imagine it anyway. A cabin in the mountains, maybe. Land where they could raise horses. A place where Marie's past didn't matter, where they could build something new. It was probably fantasy, probably foolish, but it kept him moving when the pain got bad. Marie seemed to sense his thoughts. "What are you thinking about?" she asked on the 10th day as they paused to water the horses at a creek. Montana. You. What comes after? If there is an after. There will be. Jake dismounted carefully, his movements still stiff. We've come too far to fail now. She helped him down, steadying him when he stumbled. You put a lot of faith in luck. Not luck. You. He touched her face, and she leaned into his palm. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Marie. If anyone can survive this, it's you. We, she corrected softly. If anyone can survive this, it's we. Something passed between them then, a deeper understanding. They'd started as strangers thrown together by circumstances. Somewhere along the trail, that had changed. Now they were partners, bound by shared danger and growing affection, by choices made and roads taken together. Marie kissed him there by the creek, the horses drinking peacefully nearby, the sun warm on their faces. When they parted, Jake saw tears in her eyes. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing's wrong. For the first time in years, something's right. That scares me more than the bounty hunters ever did. Jake understood. Hope was more frightening than despair because hope could be lost. They'd both learned to live without it, to expect nothing, and protect themselves from disappointment. Now they had something to lose, and that made them vulnerable. We'll be careful, he promised. We'll be smart, and we'll make it. They mounted up and rode on, the creek burbling behind them, the promise of the trading post drawing them north. On the 12th day, they spotted it, a collection of buildings nestled in a valley, smoke rising from chimneys, corrals holding horses and cattle. Chen's trading post, exactly where Jake remembered it, exactly as he'd described. They approached cautiously, watching for signs of trouble. But the post looked quiet, peaceful even. A few customers browsed the store, locals by the look of them, not hunters or law. Henry Chen emerged as they rode up, a lean man in his 50s with weathered skin and sharp eyes. He recognized Jake immediately, surprise crossing his face. Jake Cordell, Chen said. Didn't expect to see you again, especially not looking like you've been through a war. Jake dismounted slowly, every muscle protesting. Hello, Henry. I need help. Chen's gaze shifted to Marie, taking in her worn appearance, the rifle she kept close, the wariness in her stance. He was quiet for a moment, calculating, assessing. Then he nodded. Come inside, both of you. We'll talk. They followed him into the trading post, leaving the horses tied outside. The interior was dim and cool, shelves stocked with goods, a pot-bellied stove radiating heat. Chen led them to a back room, away from prying eyes, and shut the door. Start talking, he said. And don't lie to me. Jake told him everything. The debt collection, finding Marie, the bounty hunters, the burning ranch, their flight north. He left nothing out, trusting Chen to understand, to see the truth beneath the facts. Marie stood silent throughout, watching Chen's face, ready to run if necessary. When Jake finished, Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. You stepped in it deep, son. There's paper out on both of you now. 500 for the woman, 200 for you as an accomplice. Bennett survived, made it back to Santa Fe, told everyone you murdered his men in cold blood. Jake felt his stomach drop. That's not what happened. I know. Chen looked at Marie. I also know about Patterson and Sutton. Heard the real story from a man passing through last month. Sutton's been bragging about framing an Apache girl for murder. Thinks it's funny. Marie's expression didn't change, but Jake saw her hands tighten on her rifle. Does knowing the truth change anything? She asked. Chen smiled grimly. Changes everything and nothing. Truth don't matter much when there's money involved, but it matters to me. He moved to a cabinet, pulled out medical supplies. Let me see those wounds. Jake stripped off his shirt while Chen examined the injuries. The old trader worked with practiced efficiency, cleaning the wounds, applying fresh bandages, nodding approval at Marie's stitch work. You did good, he told her. Saved his life with these. Will he make it to Montana? Marie asked. Chen raised an eyebrow. Montana? That's ambitious. He finished bandaging Jake and stepped back. You're healing well enough. Another week or two of rest, you'll be fit to ride hard. Montana's possible, but it won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy, Jake said. Chen laughed. Fair point. He moved to the window looking out at the valley. I can give you supplies. Food, ammunition, fresh horses if you need them. There's a trail through the mountains that'll get you to Montana without passing through any major towns. Hard riding, but you seem good at that. Why help us? Marie asked. You're risking your business, maybe your freedom. Chen turned to face her. My wife was Navajo. She knew what it meant to be hunted for who she was. I watched her die knowing the law wouldn't protect her, wouldn't even investigate when she was killed by drunk miners. I swore then I'd never turn my back on someone running from injustice. He met her eyes. You're running from a lie. That makes you worth helping. Marie's expression softened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're not safe until you cross into Montana, and even then you'll need to be careful. Bennett's the type to hold a grudge. He'll keep looking. They spent 2 weeks at the trading post hiding in Chen's back rooms while Jake recovered and they prepared for the final push north. Chen provided everything they needed, fresh horses, supplies, maps showing the mountain trail, even new clothes to replace their torn and bloodied garments. During those 2 weeks, Jake and Marie grew closer still. They talked for hours, sharing dreams and fears, learning each other's quirks and habits. Marie taught Jake some Apache words, the language of her mother. Jake taught Marie to play poker with a deck of cards Chen provided. But mostly they just existed together, finding comfort in proximity, in the simple fact of not being alone. They slept in the same room, sometimes in the same bed, holding each other through nightmares and pain. It wasn't passion, not yet, but something deeper. Trust. Partnership. The foundation of something that might, given time, become love. On the 14th day, Chen brought news. Bennett's men were here yesterday asking questions. I told them I hadn't seen you, and they moved on. But they're getting close. You need to leave soon. That night, they prepared for departure. Chen showed them the mountain trail on a map, tracing the route with his finger. It's rough country, he warned. Snow's already falling in the high passes. You'll need to move fast to beat the worst of winter. But if you can make it through, you'll come out near a town called Billings. From there, you can disappear into Montana proper. Jake studied the map, committing it to memory. How long? 3 weeks if the weather holds. Longer if it doesn't. Marie looked at the mountain ranges marked on the map, the vast empty spaces between landmarks. We'll make it. Chen smiled. I believe you will. He handed Jake a letter. When you get to Billings, find a man named John Whitefeather. Give him this. He's Crow, runs a ranch outside town, doesn't ask questions. He'll help you get settled. Why are you doing all this? Jake asked. Because the world's got enough people making things harder. Chen clasped Jake's hand firmly. Maybe I can be one who makes things easier, even just for a moment. They left before dawn, riding out under stars that were just beginning to fade. Chen stood in the doorway of his trading post, watching them go, a solitary figure against the lamplight. Jake looked back once, saw him raise a hand in farewell, then turned his attention forward. North. Always north. Toward Montana and whatever waited there. Beside him, Marie rode with her back straight, her eyes on the horizon, ready for whatever came next. They'd started as strangers. Now they were something more. Partners. Lovers, maybe. Survivors, definitely. The mountains loomed ahead, dark and forbidding, but Jake felt no fear. Just determination. Just the steady certainty that they would make it, because failure wasn't an option anymore. They'd come too far. Lost too much. Found too much. Montana waited. And they were going to claim it. The trail rose steadily into the mountains, switchbacking through pine forests that grew thicker as they climbed. The air turned cold, sharp with the promise of snow, and Jake was grateful for the heavy coat Chen had provided. Marie rode ahead, picking the path with uncanny skill, reading the land like it spoke to her in a language only she could hear. By the third day in the mountains, they were above the tree line, riding through passes where wind howled like something alive and hungry. The horses struggled in the thin air, their breath coming in great clouds of vapor. Jake's side still ached, but the pain had become familiar, almost manageable. He'd learned to move with it, to accept it as the price of survival. They saw no sign of pursuit. The mountain trail was too remote, too difficult for casual followers. If Bennett's men were still hunting, they'd chosen easier paths. But Jake and Marie remained cautious, camping without fires, keeping watch through the cold nights, trusting nothing. On the 5th day, snow began to fall, not the gentle snow of a mild winter, but hard driving flakes that stung exposed skin and reduced visibility to a few yards. Marie found shelter in a cave, and they huddled there while the storm raged outside, wrapped in blankets, sharing body heat. Tell me about your family, Marie said, her voice barely audible over the wind. Jake stared into the darkness of the cave. Father was a farmer. Good man, bad luck. Drought killed his crops 3 years running. Bank took the land. He died 6 months later, just gave up. Mother followed him, within the year. I was 16. I'm sorry, long time ago. But the memories still hurt, distant aches like old injuries in cold weather. What about yours? Marie was quiet for a moment. Mother was strong. She taught me to track, to shoot, to survive. Said the world wasn't kind to Apache women, that I needed to be harder than the world or it would break me. She was right. She'd be proud of you. Maybe. Or maybe she'd say I should have been smarter, should have avoided trouble instead of fighting through it. Jake pulled her closer. You survived. That's what matters. The storm lasted 2 days. When it finally cleared, the world was transformed, buried under 3 feet of fresh snow. The horses could barely move through it, and Jake realized with sinking certainty that they were trapped. We can't go forward, Marie said, surveying the snow-choked pass ahead. The horses won't make it. We can't go back either. Not with winter setting in. They stared at each other, the reality of their situation settling over them like the cold. They were stuck in the high mountains, winter closing in, supplies running low. The cave that had sheltered them from the storm now looked like it might become their tomb. There's another way, Marie said slowly. An old trail my mother told me about. Apache and Crow used it for trading, back before the reservations. Goes around the high pass, follows a valley, longer but lower elevation. You know where it is? I can find it. They backtracked a full day, following Marie's instincts and half-remembered stories from her childhood. Jake watched her work with growing admiration. She read the land the way some people read books, seeing patterns and signs invisible to his eyes. On the evening of the 8th day in the mountains, they found it. A narrow valley cutting between peaks, sheltered from the worst winds, with enough tree cover to provide firewood and forage for the horses. The snow was lighter here, manageable, a way forward when all other paths had closed. How did you know? Jake asked. Marie shrugged. My mother's people walked these mountains for generations. Their knowledge lives in me, even when I don't realize it's there. They made better time through the valley, descending gradually toward the northern plains. The weather remained cold but manageable, and Jake's wounds continued to heal. Each day brought them closer to Montana, closer to freedom, closer to the new life they'd barely allowed themselves to imagine. On the 12th day, they emerged from the mountains onto rolling grassland that stretched to the horizon. Montana. They'd made it. Jake and Marie sat their horses side by side, looking out over the vast landscape. Neither spoke for a long moment, both overwhelmed by the simple fact of arrival, of survival against odds that should have killed them. We did it, Marie said finally, wonder in her voice. You did it, Jake corrected. You got us through. She turned to him, and in her eyes he saw everything they'd endured, everything they'd become to each other. Yeah, we did it together. They rode down onto the plains as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere ahead lay Billings, John Whitefeather, and the possibility of peace. But for now, they just rode two people who'd found each other in fire and blood, who'd chosen each other when the world gave them every reason to run separate ways. The horses moved at an easy walk, no longer fleeing, no longer racing death. Just traveling. Just moving toward tomorrow. Jake reached out and took Marie's hand. She squeezed back, and they rode like that as darkness fell, the first stars appearing overhead, the same stars that had watched them all along their impossible journey. They camped that night on the open plain, and for the first time in weeks they built a fire without fear. Marie cooked beans and coffee while Jake tended the horses. They ate slowly, savoring the simple pleasure of warmth and food, of being alive. What do we do now? Marie asked, staring into the flames. Jake considered. We find Whitefeather. Get settled. See if we can build something real. And if Bennett comes looking, then we deal with it. Together. He met her eyes across the fire. I'm done running scared, Marie. We made it this far because we're strong. Because we're smart. Because we don't quit. That doesn't change just because we reached Montana. She smiled. A real smile that lit up her whole face. You really are crazy, you know that? Crazy about you. Marie laughed, and the sound carried across the empty prairie, joyful and free. She came around the fire and sat beside him, and Jake wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire burn down to embers, watching the stars wheel overhead, existing in that perfect moment between struggle and rest, between past and future. I love you, Marie said suddenly, quietly, like the words he'd been waiting a long time to escape. Jake kissed the top of her head. I love you too. Have since that first day, when you pointed a rifle at my back and told me to leave. Should have known right then I was in trouble. She turned in his arms and they kissed properly, deeply, with all the passion and relief and joy they'd been holding back during their flight, When they parted, both were breathless, both were smiling. "Come on, cowboy," Marie said, standing and pulling him up. "Let's go to bed. We got a long ride ahead tomorrow." They made love that night under the Montana stars, slow and tender and fierce by turns, celebrating survival, celebrating each other, celebrating the impossible fact of their love. When they finally slept, wrapped in each other's arms, Jake dreamed not of fire and blood, but of green valleys and running horses, of a cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, of Marie's laughter echoing off mountain walls. The next morning they rode for Billings. The town appeared at midday, a sprawl of buildings on the plains, bigger than Jake had expected, busy with commerce and life. They rode in carefully, watching for trouble, but nobody gave them a second glance. Just another couple of travelers on the Montana frontier, unremarkable and free. They found John Whitefeather at his ranch 5 miles outside town, a tall Crow man with silver in his hair and a weathered, intelligent face. Jake gave him Chen's letter, and Whitefeather read it slowly, his expression giving nothing away. Finally, he looked up. "Chen says you need help. Says you're good people in bad circumstances." "That's about right," Jake said. Whitefeather studied them both, his gaze lingering on Marie. "You Apache?" "Half." He nodded. "My wife is Shoshone. We know about running from the past." He folded the letter carefully. "I got work if you want it. Room in the bunkhouse. Pays fair, and I don't ask questions about where you came from." Jake looked at Marie. She nodded slightly. "We'd appreciate that," Jake said. "More than you know." Whitefeather smiled. "Come on, then." They stayed at Whitefeather's ranch through the winter, working hard, keeping their heads down, learning the rhythms of ranch life. Jake healed completely, his scars fading to thin white lines. Marie proved herself a natural with horses, gentling wild mustangs with patience and skill that impressed even Whitefeather's most experienced hands. No bounty hunters came. No law appeared looking for them. Slowly, cautiously, they began to believe they might actually be safe. In the spring, Whitefeather made them an offer. "I got land up in the North Valley I'm not using. Good water, good grass, sheltered. You two want to homestead it, it's yours. I'll help you get started." Jake and Marie accepted gratefully. They built a cabin together that summer, working side by side in the mountain valley, shaping a home from logs and stone and sweat. Marie planted a garden while Jake built corrals for the horses they planned to raise. On a warm evening in July, they stood outside their finished cabin, looking out over the valley. The sun was setting, painting everything gold, and the future stretched before them vast and full of possibility. "We made it," Jake said. Marie leaned against him. "We did. No regrets?" She thought about it. "I regret Dutch dying. I regret the men we killed. But I don't regret choosing you. I'd do it all again for this." Jake kissed her. "Marry me." "I thought you'd never ask." They were married that fall in a small ceremony at Whitefeather's ranch, with Chen making the long journey north to witness it. Standing before friends in their new home, Jake realized that he'd found what he'd always wanted. Not just land or horses or property, but belonging, purpose, love. The debt that had started everything was long forgotten, written off by his former employer, irrelevant in the life they'd built. Jake had come to collect $300 and instead found something priceless. As winter approached again, Jake and Marie settled into their cabin, warm and safe, the mountains standing guard around their valley. They'd survived impossible odds, fought their way through fire and blood, crossed deserts and mountains, and emerged stronger on the other side. Sometimes in the evening, sitting by the fire, Marie would take Jake's hand and smile that smile he loved, the one that said she was happy, truly happy, maybe for the first time in her life. And Jake would smile back, knowing he'd made the right choice that day at the burning ranch, knowing he'd do it all again in a heartbeat. They'd started as strangers. They'd become partners in survival. Now they were husband and wife, building a life in Montana, free and unafraid. The Apache bride who'd chosen him as her partner had also chosen hope over despair, love over loneliness, and a future neither of them had dared imagine in those dark days of running and fighting. And Jake Cordell, the cowboy who'd come to collect a debt, had found something far more valuable than money. He'd found home.